Everyone in Cornwall swore the millionaire's daughter was blind, like it was a fact carved into the cliffs. I was the maid who opened a curtain, traced a beam of light across the rug, and heard a small voice say, "I think I see it." Yeah, that happened. And in that second, the house that fed on silence finally exhaled. My name is Sophie Bennett, and this is the part of the story people skip because it isn't glamorous. It's just life. Scrubbing floors with sea salt in the air, timing tea to the minute, learning how grief turns a mansion into a mausoleum. Edward Whitmore, the famous novelist who stopped writing when his wife died, lived in a glass palace above the water, all windows and long halls, and a kind of expensive quiet that gets under your skin. His little girl Anna sat in rooms built to worship sunlight, clutching a bald teddy like a life raft, eyes wide and empty, the kind of empty everyone learns to tiptoe around. I used to be a pediatric nurse, so I noticed small things. How a child stills when a chair leg scrapes, how a face tilts when brightness shifts, how instinct argues with diagnosis. You know what I mean? On my third morning, I asked Anna if I could try something tiny. No pressure, no big promises. I clicked on a small flashlight and swept it left to right, slow as a tide. At first, nothing. Then two blinks that didn't feel random, a breath that hitched the body's way of saying, "Wait, I felt that." She whispered, "It's warm. Not bright, not clear, just warm." Warm is a word you grab with both hands when a child has been pronounced beyond hope. I kept my mouth shut around the staff, because hope tossed into a house like this can ricochet and hurt people. I tried again the next day, slower, softer, her fingers wrapped around mine like a rope. Then the door opened, and there he was. Edward in the doorway, jaw-tight voice like winter. "Absolutely not. Who told you you could do that?" Before I could answer, Anna stood, 6 wobbling steps, brave like a spark in a storm, and pressed herself against me. "Father, I see light." The way Edward dropped into the chair, the way he had to cover his face with his hands, even though he is not the kind of man who hides. I won't forget it. He looked at the brown glass bottle on the table. Dr. Malcolm Graves's eye drops the ones that came with the verdict that Anna would never see, and his voice went rough. "We stopped those today. No more." So we began again, but different. Mornings I pulled back the heavy curtains and let the ocean sky flood the room, and I watched her face turn toward the window like a sunflower that had been taught to sleep. Afternoons, I drew thick black circles and squares with a marker, and we played simple games not to prove anyone wrong, just to listen to her brain wake up. She hesitated, then pointed, then smiled. The first time she got the circle right, Edward didn't cheer. He just stood there in the doorway, both hands over his eyes, breathing like a man who's been underwater too long. And because I am who I am, I kept cleaning, and I kept looking. And one day, the linen closet gave up its secret. A wooden box behind the towels stacked with small bottles, labels damp and curling, Malcolm Graves' dosage heavy and steady like a drumbeat. I knew that name, that medication, the way it holds pupils open and dulls the world, good for exams, terrible for every day. I took a bottle and a picture to my friend Annie, an ophthalmologist who survived the same hospital halls I did. She read the label, then read it again, and her face did that thing trained faces do when they hit something they can't sugarcoat. "At this strength, long-term, you can simulate blindness," she said. "You can train the eyes and the brain to stop asking for detail. That's not mercy, that's harm." I placed the bottle on Edward's kitchen table like a confession that didn't belong to either of us. He stared at the name. "Graves," he said, softer than you'd expect. "The doctor who told me not to hope. The truth is ugly and simple. He'd been too broken by losing Margaret to argue with a man who sounded certain, and certainty is the easiest thing to buy when you're rich and scared. We made a plan. No more drops, document every reaction, arrange an independent evaluation, and if the science said what we thought it said, go to war, not because money fixes anything, but because accountability speaks a language even pride understands. While we waited for the appointment, the house started sounding human again. At breakfast, forks made conversation instead of noise. In the study, a rusted typewriter remembered its job. On the grassy bluff, Edward took Anna's hand and told her the purple flowers were the color the sky gets when it forgives the sun for leaving. She laughed. The report came back like a tide you can't bargain with. Partial vision present pupils suppressed beyond expectation, functional improvement, since cessation of medication. In plain speech, she wasn't born blind, she was kept there. That's the twist right there in black and white. People want a villain with a cape, but most damage wears a white coat and a calm voice. In court, experts explained what the drops do when they're misused, how they make the world a smear, and then teach a brain to live inside it. The defense tried to put Latin on top of everything, like frosting on a burnt cake. Our lawyer, a woman who never blinked at the right time, cut through with questions that sounded like common sense. At this dose for this long, did you warn the family you might be harming development? Did you clearly document consent for off-label use? Did you track the risks or just assume the authority you were given could erase them? Graves kept saying judgment call like it was a prayer. Edward took the stand at the end. He didn't cry. He didn't perform. He said, I loved my daughter so much, I outsourced my courage. I let a man's certainty carry a burden that should have been mine. And if you need to put blame on me, do it, but don't call it care when a child is taught to live in the dark. The room went so quiet, you could hear the gulls outside arguing about the wind. The verdict wasn't fireworks, it was a gate opening. License revoked penalties, a sentence that said the harm had a name. I didn't feel triumph. I felt relief, the soft kind, the kind that sounds like a child at a window, saying yellow like my dress, and pointing with her whole body. After that, life did the slow work. Anna started school, a para by her side who knows listening is a skill. Edward cooked again, fed us halibut with lemon, and a joke he hadn't used in years. You know the kind of joke you tell, because your appetite came back and brought your voice with it. We walked the beach in the late light, the three of us, and he told me. He wrote 3 pages that morning, not because anyone asked him to, but because desire climbed back into his chest and refused to leave. One evening he pulled a ring from his pocket, knees in the sand, like a man who doesn't care about dignity if it means telling the truth. You brought back her light, he said. You brought back mine, will you help me keep it on? I said yes, not because I like tidy endings, but because I believe in houses where the curtains stay open. Do we still have hard days? Yeah. Some mornings the world comes in fuzzy for Anna, and we practice patience like it's a second language. Some nights I still count the child I lost by minutes, because the heart thinks math will save it. People in town still decide who I am based on what apron I wear, or which car drops me at the market. And medicine, for all its miraculous work, still has rooms where confidence walks louder than humility. But when the wind hits the bluff just right, and the sea turns the green that only happens after a storm, Anna points and names it, and that is how justice sounds in our house. Not a cheer, a naming. If you're waiting for me to tell you what to think of Dr. Graves, monster or man who hid his fear behind professional grammar, I can't. If you want me to tell you Edward is a hero because he admitted failure, or a coward because he believed the wrong person for too long. I can't. What I can tell you is that a stranger with a flashlight tried something small, a father chose hope over certainty, a child learned that light belongs to her. That's the part I own. The rest, you tell me. Is this justice or just a clean verdict for a messy truth? Would you have tried that flashlight if it was your kid? How do you decide who to trust when the expert sounds certain and your gut is whispering, try again? Drop your take in the comments. Tell me where you land. Argue with me if you need to share the story of the time someone's confidence almost cost you everything. Like, subscribe, send this to the person who thinks authority is the same thing as honesty. And tell me, in a world that rewards certainty, who should get to turn on the light and who has to live with what it reveals. Thumbnail prompt in English. Paste directly into Google AI. Subject use only real people, no cartoons, no CGI. Characters and appearance must be clearly distinguished by race. Edward Whitmore, white British man in his 40s, expensive but rumpled coastal suit. Sophie Bennett, black woman in her 30s, natural hair in a low-puff plain housekeeper dress and apron. Anna Whitmore, white girl 6 to 7 years old, pale sweater worn teddy bear. Dr. Malcolm Graves, older white male doctor in a white lab coat, stern expression. Image content. Capture the highest conflict moment in the sunlit drawing room. Sophie kneels center, holding a small flashlight that shines toward Anna's eyes. Anna clings to Sophie's waist and reaches toward the light, while Edward stands to the left, tearing a brown glass eye drop bottle from Dr. Graves's hand on the right. The big red arrow points to the eye drop bottle in Edward's fist. Style photoreal 16. 9. Natural light. Clean composition suitable for a YouTube thumbnail. Strong directional light with deep shadows, shallow depth of field on the 3 central characters, high contrast. Main subject centered in the frame, slight backlight, creating a rim on hair and face. Technical notes: if the source photo has any text arrows or circles, remove them all. Add 1 large red arrow pointing at the eye drop bottle in Edward's hand. Add a short 4-6 word American English headline in all caps at the top of the image that states the core conflict, e.g., stolen sight, stolen years, or they kept her in darkness. Ensure the text is legible on mobile, aligned cleanly, and does not cover faces.